Hello, this is Distracted Lord, and welcome back to Scrap Mechanic. And a few weeks ago, a YouTuber by the name of ScrapMan, who I follow and who plays a lot of Scrap Mechanic, announced that he was going to do a community project, I guess, where he was going to make a Martian world, and people were going to make things to put in it. And so naturally, as a Scrap Mechanic player myself, I had to go and build some things to help. So this world I have here is made out of a random selection of a couple of the tiles that people have submitted. It's not the best ones, I kind of rushed it, but it serves its purpose of letting me build things, and I have rolled the car. There is a solution to it. We will get to that in a minute. But this is actually the second thing I made. We'll get to the first one in a bit, but it's just a sort of buggy. It does look like a buggy. It is very heavy because on Mars the mass of your vehicle, well, you need a lot more of it to get the same weight because the gravity is a lot less. Then we have a couple of switches, and the first switch turns on the lights. The second switch does something magical, which you'll see in a second. But this also has an unnecessarily complicated suspension system because, well, I built it. And of course I had to build an overly complicated suspension system. But as you saw there are some thrusters. And what those thrusters do is they point upwards. And they of course do not provide downforce by pointing upwards. In fact, they make it sort of fly a bit. And the point of them is that they help you have in-air control, so that you don't just roll over. It's a little bit aggressive sometimes, but most of the time it works fine. So the second switch, all that does is controls whether it is allowing the in-air control or not. If I turn this off, no matter how much I use my WAS keys, because that is what it is, just WAS controlled, you just also have to have this on. Whereas now if I turn this on, you see when I wave the wheels, it does this. If I turn it off, it stops again. Of course you can't use it on the ground because then you would just roll going in a straight line, and as soon as you try to turn, and that would be bad. There's also a nice handy bit of boot space at the back here, basically. It's not exactly a boot, more like a pickup bed, really. The spoiler is a little bit in the way. It also does not provide any significant amount of downforce, but it sure looks cool. It is made out of wing blocks, so theoretically it could provide downforce. We also have an amazing interior view, and we have these little things on the nose there that act as like a crosshair, because you need a crosshair when driving a vehicle. It doesn't even have weapons. Then down there you can just see a speedometer, which tells you your speed, and an altimeter, because you need one of those when you're driving your car. So there is actually a reasonable amount of space at the back here. I mean, you could shove some boxes in there. And then we have this pointy thing. I was building this, and I accidentally used the wrong pieces and glitch welded them together at the front here, and then I was like, hey, that actually looks kind of cool. And so I put another sort of replica of it on here, and I put another version down there. And then I painted all the highlights and stuff, and it turned out rather well. My accidental mess up with a glitch welder has resulted in a fairly adequate looking car, which is kind of surprising, because normally when you use a glitch welder you end up with some terrible things that just break the game half the time. So let's get back out of first person, because it's not great. This game has terrible first person. So this is the second thing I made. So now let me get the first. As you can see, it's a little bit larger, by which I mean it's quite a lot larger. It is also much higher and has many more wheels. I can jump up in here and I will shut the door. Clunk, that sounded bad. There's a nice beacon here which is phasing through the roof. We're going to ignore this. The back down here is just filled with food boxes, because that's what we're transporting. Lots of food items. That's that light switch. Where's I put a light switch over here? There's a light switch behind the boxes that you can't get to. I just wanted to make it look like it wasn't designed to have these boxes because, of course, I've painted all stuff behind it. If you want to, you can take the boxes out and move them around and put something else in. This is on the workshop. Up here we have some more storage stuff. Just some pallets, some papers, hard work pays off sign in the corner, and some piping going through the ceiling. And you might be wondering why on earth is there piping going through the ceiling? And it has a very definite function. It does in fact line up with these. It does line up with the piping on top. It doesn't actually do anything, but it looks cool. Like all this mess out the front here. Function? No, of course not. There's a sort of big aerial over here, and there's a satellite dish that just sort of shuffles about a bit. Like, it just sits here and wobbles, and then at some random point it just goes and turns. Like that, it just sits there and wobbles a bit, and then randomly turns. And I definitely didn't create that thing by mistake and was like, hey, that looks cool. So if I get in the seat, we don't have that many switches. The first one is just another toggle for the door. There are 3 things for the door, and they can all do it themselves. Then we have some lights at the front here, some nice bright lights. And then we have some more lights, just in case 16 wasn't enough for you. There's an extra 8 on top. And then we have controls for the lights at the back and the lights at the front. However, this thing has a couple of other automated things. So if I am stopped and I go backwards, you see that the reversing lights come on, because that is very important. But also if I go forwards, the door automatically closes. Initially I had it so that when you go forwards, the door goes and makes a nice warning beeper, which was funny, but didn't actually tell you particularly useful things, and I thought that might lead to lots of confusion, so I had to change it. But now the door automatically closes itself. If you stop, you do have to manually reopen it, because it didn't used to do that. I spent ages trying to figure out how to make it do that, because it was really confusing when it didn't. And sometimes it would just be like random things, and if you had the door closed and then drove off, sometimes it would open itself again, which is not helpful. So this thing has no thrust at all, and you might be thinking, well, how on earth does it not fall over? And the answer to that, again, lies in weight. The centre of mass of this thing is, I think it was about the corner of this wooden box here where you can see my crosshair is. It's about there. It's literally sort of in line with a red stripe along it. What that means is that you have to seriously high centre it and go over some pretty serious bumps for its centre of mass to actually go outside the wheelbase. Speaking of the wheelbase, what we have at the front and the back, they are basically identical other than the steering, is, if I will stop and demonstrate this properly. The door, because of scrap mechanic physics, likes to not open itself sometimes and just get jammed, and so there is a solution to this. Up here there is something that dispenses cardboard, and a spud gun glitch welded into this thing, which just shoots the cardboard. So what it does is when the door tries to open, if after the amount of time the door should have opened it hasn't, it then just goes and places a block and shoots it. There is this little sensor down here that detects whether the door is open. So it just goes, has the door opened? No. Do the thing, and then the door snaps open with incredible force. So if we get out my lift, I can demonstrate the suspension. So obviously we can just lift up this side on its own. Also if I put this just under one wheel and I lift this up, you can see we also have a bit of movement on the other axis as well. Not that you can really see it, because the wheels are quite close together. If you're going like on a steep angle, it really comes into use and it keeps all the wheels on the ground. The only real difference between the front and back is that this has just standard steering. This doesn't. This has controller steering, and the only reason for that is because stupid seats have a maximum number of connections. I don't know why, because it doesn't make sense. Why does a level 5 seat in creative mode have a maximum number of connections. But that means that these have to be done by controller. And so that also means that I can have it so that only the outside one goes. So if I turn this way, this wheel, the inside wheel stays the same. Which means that if you're going round a highly adverse camber, you don't fall over quite as much. You may also notice on the side of this thing it says Discorp, and those of you who have been watching the channel for a fairly long time, I guess, may have seen that word before. It is in fact short for Distracted Corporation, and it is the sort of fictional company that I refer to when I play any game in which I need any form of company, and I like to make other companies that are divisions of it, like Tag Motors Inc., the company, or the fictional company that makes all vehicles that I build, which is often quite a lot of them, because everything in automation and a lot of my scrap mechanic builds have tag logos on them. There's also the DBC, the Distracted Broadcasting Corporation. Well, no, it's Distracted Broadcasting Company, just so I can be even more different to the BBC, because why would you want to be like the BBC? Let's be honest. I'm British, there's going to be a bunch of American people who are like, what's the BBC? But you see, it can be rolled if you yeet it hard enough. The DBC has only appeared a couple of times in my content. Once to... well, actually, no, I guess technically it's more than once, but there's a building in my Minecraft creative world which has the DBC logo on the side because I built a DBC headquarters in my city. Also, that video I made of tabs where I built a Stargate faction also referenced the DBC, but it's another of those things that I've had lying around on my channel for a long time and I reference occasionally. But Discorp now has a new division called Mars, with capital letters, stylized like this, with the fancy polygons because that looks cool, yes, and I'm floating to space because levitation mod doesn't work on Mars gravity particularly well. And before I forget, let me go and talk about the interior of this thing. So you have this nice wide window all around that you can't really see out the sides of because the giant shoulders of this tank. The wheel arches are sort of in there, and well, the wheel arches sort of down there, but there's a bunch of logic in there. Like if I pull out this, you see this whole thing's just full of logic, and especially that one is just full of mod pack stuff mostly. There's a few cactuses up there, there's some other plants up here, and then we have the control panels. So all the switches that you see, we have that one there, that and that one, and this other one here. Which plays a random beat, like it's not connected to the seat. You can get out and press that if you want, and it just starts going just endlessly. It doesn't add anything, and I just decided I needed 6 things, and I was like, you know what, let's do something stupid. And so I got to the throttle one, and then made it play a beatbox sort of thing for no good reason. But then you can also, we have a control panel on this one as well. We have a speedometer and a velocitometer just in case you need them. Then we have the altitude as well, and this is a clock. The thing just goes round. To demonstrate that the altimeter actually works, as I go up here, you can see that it's going up. And I do not have great visibility. But we climbed that hill with no issue, because this thing is an absolute tank and just goes anywhere. And I can just yeet it off here and it will roll and have a bad day. But it's fine, we're back on the wheels and now we can just drive through here. Okay, we're having a bit of an issue starting though. So it took like 5 minutes, but it did literally just make it up there. It was not really going on, and then suddenly it went the whole way. But you can sort of see the suspension doing its thing. And there's some nice craters down here. I should be able to demonstrate it using these. So if I just drive on into the crater, The wheels just collapsed even though they're double bearinged. You can see that the suspension is like folding forwards. The front wheels are a lot higher than the back wheels on the front bogie. How are we doing that? And then we can just jump out of there. We're also just not going to talk about the fact that the wheel arches are completely pointless. The suspension physically cannot compress such that the wheel could even touch the bottom of the vehicle if there was no wheel arches. Don't mention it, it just looks cool. But that's going to be it for this video, so thank you for watching. Don't get distracted, go subscribe now, and until next time, goodbye.